am so glad to have this opportunity to connect with the two of you. I feel connected already because my two nieces toured with you, Jada, on Young Cons in 97. 97.
Yes.
It's great to talk to you both. And just ask you the one question: how has your Continental experience made a difference in what you do today?
Wow.
And what are you doing today?
Yes. So go backwards to go forwards. I've been called a trailblazer by some people, and at first I didn't like that term. It seemed negative, but I think that God really used our experience with Continentals, and I think John would share this. We were church planters, and I'm from a town of 300 people, a village in Louisiana, and he still says there's 3 people there. There's more cows than people. But I grew up in a very small church, and it was being with Continentals that I learned how to fundraise. I learned to work with all different types of people, all different ministry backgrounds. And really, it propelled me to where I am today. For the last 25 years, I've served in ministry and various pastoral roles, kept my music studio going at home, was a music professor. And then now I'm currently serving as the executive director of advancement at a Christian university and working as at Slingshot, Monty Kelso, who is a Continental guy, with his team there.
And one of my board members. And
Okay.
I was his assistant director for he and Krista.
Oh my goodness.
1980. Yep. So, John, how about you?
Well, I mean, I think a large part of what I'm doing now is because of Continentals. That was just the foundation for me. I believe God called me to ministry when I was 16, but I had no idea. I had no direction. I was going to be a doctor, pre-med. A friend of mine, took me to a Continental concert, never heard of Continentals before. Concert was over. He says, "I'm not leaving until you audition." Mm-hmm. And so I auditioned and went on to be accepted. And he also funded my tour. Like anything I couldn't come up with, he paid the rest of the way. So
that's amazing.
He really God used him. God used the Continentals. I was probably one of 100,000 people that could have been accepted at my level. Like I was inadequate musically to be there, and I was way over my head. And so Continentals became a music training ground for me. I developed me as a musician, developed me as a worship leader, developed me as a manager of people, trying to, going on to direct and learning how to manage 30 to 40 really unique personalities on a bus for 3 months was I don't know, it was like war. It's
not for the faint of heart, is it?
Great training ground for me. So wow. Yeah, so much of what I've gone on to do is because the foundation I gained it with the Continental Singers. So I'm so grateful for those opportunities. I've been a pastor, worship pastor. We've church planted together. We've co-pastored together. And currently I work for the denomination. So I oversee a conference of churches. I'm an assistant superintendent. So the 2 superintendents are lead pastors of mega churches. So they're very busy. And so I basically run the day-to-day operations of that. Wow. And then I work with an organization right now called Ministry Advance, which I'm super excited about because we go into churches, we consult. I'm a consultant, and we help them. We help them with generosity. No matter how good your giving is or how bad it is, we want to help you take your generosity to see the giving in your church increase the next level. Mm-hmm. We have great success at doing that. I love it. And one of the things Continental taught me was how not to be afraid to ask for money, how not to be afraid to raise money, how not to be afraid to cast a vision. And so all those things I learned early on, I'm applying in a variety of ways. And so we help the churches run capital campaigns, raise millions of dollars, change the trajectory of the kingdom. And so I just love it. It's tremendous.
I think it's safe to say, this is probably the obvious, but we would not be who we are today had it not been for Continentals. Again, I'm from small town Louisiana. John is from Seattle. We met on a Continental tour. We followed all the rules. We were not a tour couple. And, months later, a year after our first tour,
we actually thought we hated each other. We had swung the pendulum so far the other way because I was disciplining people for being in relationships. I was trying to keep the rules, and so we were kind of mean to one another.
That's hilarious.
But just to protect ourselves. But
when did you first tour, just as participants on the tour?
So my first tour was 92.
92.
And mine wasn't until 95. In fact, I had never heard of the Continentals until the summer of 93. One of my best friends from college, he was touring on the orchestra tour. And he's like, you've got to come see us. And so we went and saw his tour in Dallas. And similar to Jon, he's like, you have to audition. And auditioned. And then I went with the Continentals and Brass and Singers to Israel the next summer. So.
Wow. Incredible. And then directed Jon in 96.
So, my first tour was 96 to direct, and Jada came on as my assistant.
Yeah.
And then
you directed the Young Cons alone, Jada?
I did, yes. So he directed that summer and I directed, and then I went to work for the Continentals as national talent director after David Chrisman for Young Cons.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, as you look back over the kind of the overall experience with Continentals, what are some of the real nugget takeaways for you? Like in certain principles or things that jump out when you glance back at your Continental experience and you grab onto a memory, what is it?
I mean, the most profound memory for me would be, other than meeting Jada, would be after my second tour to direct. I think Michael Mahoney and Wally Nason were after me to hit the road to direct Jeremiah People, and they're pushing me pretty hard. And I remember after director's debriefing time, Cam grabbed me, put me in the car with him on the way to dinner, and he just said, just profoundly said to me, if you were my son, I would tell you not to do it. Like, I want you to do JP, but if you're really serious about Jada, go home and get to know her and figure that out. And that was profound. I said no to be based upon Cam's fatherly advice to me at that point, and I'm really grateful for him. I'm grateful for I love the times. I don't remember exactly everything Cam said, but times he would show up as a director and take me out to dinner and debrief about the show and give some positive input, and whatever. His yellow pad was his yellow pad, and it was helpful. It helped me to learn how to appreciate feedback and just the whole desire to be excellent. And excellent is an act of worship. Being excellent is a form of worship.
That's so great. We're sending those yellow pads to the Smithsonian just to see if anybody can decipher them, because none of us can. So Jada, how about you? What are some takeaways for you?
Oh, I think, again, being from such a small town, and I love my heritage of where I'm from, but I think, sometimes you think that's where God has you and where you're going to stay. And I think by going with Continentals, that's really where I got on a path of course, deepening my faith, but just figuring out what God had for me. I still remember we were in a high school gymnasium in Canada, and Jon, we were setting up the set in the stage, and he said, hey, you have a phone call. And it was Wally Nason, and Wally's like, we want you to be a director. And it was really in that moment, like you think you're a leader, but you haven't really had the opportunity to really lead. And then somebody just calls that out in you. And it just set me on a trajectory of both doing things afraid, and also not being afraid to lead. And I think, especially as a woman in ministry, I value Continentals, because I grew up in a Southern Baptist pastor's home, but I was able to work and associate and get to know people from all Christian backgrounds and connect with pastors. And I think that has really served me well as a pastor and minister myself, but also in my role now, both at SCU, where I'm working with lots of pastors in different churches, but also with Slingshot. And I just appreciate the fact too, one thing I will never forget is, you get told at rehearsal camp as an AD, hey, you need to know all the solos. Well, I didn't take that seriously until we were in Chicago one night, and Jon just looks at me and he points at me and he's like, you're up. And it was a rap. I'm a singer. Like, I'm not a dancer. I'm not a rapper.
Oh,
And
that's
I had to do the rap. And the next summer when we got to rehearsal camp, there were literally international Continental directors. And this was before YouTube, Jim.
right.
They're like, oh, you're that girl.
One of the things I really appreciated about my time with Continentals is just learning how to share the gospel in one-on-one settings. As a director, I ended up loving with a passion presenting the gospel and seeing people come to Christ. It's fueled my soul for a long time since, and just learning the skills and the ability to do that it's been invaluable. I would say that there's probably 1,000 people in the last 20 years of ministry that have said yes to Jesus, and it's because of what I learned, and was able to apply that not just on Continental tours, but in church settings as well. So
it's been amazing to me because I mean it's been close to 30 years since I first heard of Continentals and directed, and thanks to different social media platforms and because our jobs have moved us across the country, we've kept in touch with people we toured with, host families. And then of course, kids, relatively speaking, who were on our tours and, getting to meet now their children. And it's been really amazing because we all know everybody has a different experience with Continentals. It was very regimented, very disciplined. But to see some of the fruits, even maybe some of the hard discussions that we had to have as leaders with tour members, it's just really rewarding for me today. And I echo what Jon says. I know I wouldn't be who or where I am today had I not said yes to that first tour. And, in my little town of 300 people, raised, $5,000 or $6,000 to go on that first tour. It really changed my life.
Have you ever wished you could gift your life-changing Continental experience to someone else? Well, you can. Your monthly giving can make a huge impact for our teams all over the world. Did you know that this year, we'll have more than 20 Continental groups on the road, communicating in 7 different languages? The Continental story goes on, so keep writing your part of it by being on our support team. And our groups will say, thank you, in 7 different languages.